Hello, my name is Lisa Doe. I'm a family law attorney here at Beresford Booth. For this week's webinar, I'm so excited to be joined by attorney and mediator Rachel Feldbeck. She's a principal at the law firm of Sakaguchi, Feldbeck, Story, and Reese in Kirkland. She's been practicing family law since 1995. Rachel is also the founder of the collaborative divorce movement here in Washington State. She's gone on to train collaborative lawyers and participated in numerous speaking engagements and publications. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today. And of course, your continued contributions to the collaborative community. So welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So I want to jump right in. For those that may not know, can you tell us briefly what is a collaborative divorce?
Sure. Collaborative divorce is a dispute resolution process. We actually have a statute in Washington under Title VII, and the process is designed to have everybody working as a team together to solve the issues that are present for the parties. So rather than having attorneys on either side of the case and arguing against each other, the attorneys are kind of working as co-mediators to help the parties come through with resolutions that will work for both of them. That being said, the lawyers are not neutral. We do represent our clients and we do protect our clients' interests.
Yeah, and I sort of think of it, it's really interest-based, like what are trying to meet the goals of the spouses. And you have a professional team, including collaborative lawyers, who are working together to try to reach a resolution that meets both of the parties' needs and the family's needs.
Correct. The team can also, and almost always does here in King County, include a divorce coach, which is a mental health practitioner. And their job is to do two things, primarily to work with the parties for whatever issues may be present in their married lives that could be affecting their ability to make decisions in their divorce. And they also work with parents on helping to create a parenting plan that will work for both the parents and the children. And then we also have a financial neutral who's responsible for collecting all the financial data, running scenarios that the parties might like to see, calculating child support, doing some spousal support calculations, and whatever else either the lawyers or the parties would like to see from them.
So what drew you to the collaborative process?
So like most lawyers, I started out of law school doing litigation. And for me, I found that for many people, litigation was contrary to what they wanted. They wanted to get divorced, but they didn't necessarily want to be deeply in conflict. And if we do a standard approach where we file a motion for temporary orders, we're actually starting parties down a conflict path right from the get-go. Because if one person says, I should be primary parent because of these reasons, the other person's almost always going to come back with reasons why they should be primary parent. And at the end of the divorce process, even if we got settled in mediation, we would then tell these parties that we've started down a path of conflict. Well, now you have to co-parent for the next 15 or 20 years. And it felt like for many people, we were doing more harm than good. And so I was looking for a process that would really create a good resolution for parties who didn't need the court process. It's not to say the court process is bad, because there are lots of people who really need to be hear from a judge and to hear exactly how their process will be managed. The collaborative process fills a different niche. It's for people who can communicate, who may not have great communication, but they can discuss things and work through their issues together to come up with a resolution outside of court that's really going to meet those interests that you talked about.
And to add to that, exactly what you said, not only like they don't necessarily have to be able to communicate, it's just that desire is there and they're willing to cooperate with the professional team, because the collaborative lawyers and the rest of the team will help the parties to be able to communicate productively.
Exactly.
So it's very similar to you. And when I heard your story, it really resonated with me because I started out as only doing litigation work and many, many years. And I just thought to myself, there has to be a better framework for families so that there's not so much damage done at the end of the divorce process. Yes, going through litigation, getting temporary orders in place during the divorce case, it gets things done. But at the end of the day, does that strengthen or support the co-parenting relationship? How are they communicating post-divorce, especially if you have young or minor children that you still need to have contact with the other spouse? So I'm just so glad that I did discover this the collaborative divorce process, and I spoke to you about it, and I just think that it's great that you and others are trying to get the word out because I think a lot of people do not know what a collaborative divorce is. And this is an option that's available. Maybe it's not a good fit for you. Maybe it is, right? But I think it's worth it to get it out there so people can make an informed decision in terms of how they want to handle their divorce.
Right.
Um, so what do you think are the advantages of using the collaborative process?
Well, I think, like you were just saying, Lisa, that one of the many advantages is the ability to limit the amount of harm that is caused by a divorce. And even in collaborative process, of course, especially with children, there is that risk of harm that we may do inadvertently to the parents' relationship with each other or their relationship with the children. And the collaborative process is designed to help the parents work together to come up with solutions that will meet the specific needs of their children and their specific needs. I think that's especially true if children or parents have any kind of mental health issues or other issues that will really need to have people working together to help their children, become adults in the best manner possible.
I
For
think also like from the get-go, taking away that threat of litigation, because when you agree to the collaborative process, you sign a participation agreement saying, we're all in on this process. No one's going to go and file for divorce or take court action. Otherwise, the process is terminated. So taking that off the table from the beginning really allows spouses to be able to share what their needs are and not feel that anxiety that can come with litigation. And hopefully removing that makes them more productive in terms of trying to reach a resolution. I also think another advantage is agreements reached in this process, they're more durable. Have you found that as well in terms of parties are complying, there's less violations of court orders or having to deal with issues post-divorce?
Sure, I see that a lot. I don't have what I like to nickname annuity clients coming back very often. We have parties that if are instrumental in creating their own resolution, and when you've created your own resolution, you're much more likely to honor it and to want to support it than if a resolution is imposed on you by an outside party like a judge or an arbitrator. So I do see parties actually able to work together effectively when things do change and they need to come back. I see a willingness for parties to return back to the collaborative process to try and address the issues that are specifically changed from their original agreement.
Um, do you think there are any disadvantage to the collaborative process at all?
One of the things that we used to say is that the collaborative process is less expensive than a traditional litigation process. I don't necessarily think that's true anymore. I think that we do have to be careful about the fact that when you have two lawyers and at least two other professionals on a team, it's going to be an expensive meeting, right? That's going to be over $1,000 an hour per meeting. And so I do like to screen my cases very carefully, A, to make sure the clients can afford it, and B, to make sure it's the right process for them. It might be too much process, and we don't want to spend people's money unnecessarily.
Yeah. And when you say too much process, like at the beginning, you told us about people who make up the professional team, lawyers, a financial specialist. a divorce coach, is it mandatory to have all of those professionals on the team?
It's not particularly mandatory, but I will say the process worked most effectively when all those professionals are on the team. I have tried not using a divorce coach before, and more often than not, at some point we want to bring a divorce coach in, and it's almost too late at that point in time. So I do think that from my experience, the team process is the most effective way to work with the parties.
And I'm glad you're being upfront about the cost because that's something that spouses need to consider. I can also say that many times it's comparable. Maybe you can speak on this in terms of your experience, but litigation and then the collaborative process, I find that many times they end up being the same. And except you're walking away from the litigation process with maybe not so great feelings towards the other spouse. And versus the collaborative process, you really have worked together. And so you've built that, and the agreement's more durable thereafter. Would you say the same? Or would you say there's a big difference between the two types of cases in terms of cost?
Well, oh, okay, to be perfectly transparent, it's been many, many years since I've done litigation. And so I can only speak anecdotally from what I hear from my partners or other lawyers in town as to the costs of litigation. But I can say that I believe that the costs do tend to be somewhat similar as long as the case doesn't go to trial. I think if a litigation case is going to trial, then the costs really jump up. But beyond that, I think the costs will be somewhat comparable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think trial's a whole nother thing. If you go to
Right.
trial, of course, attorney's fees, and if you have any experts as well, those costs will be significant. Do you think the collaborative process is a good fit for all divorce cases?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There are cases on one end of the spectrum where, like I said, maybe it's too much process for the parties. You know, maybe they can work with a mediator. Maybe a couple of consultations with an attorney is really all they need. And to move them into a process where we have all those team members and they've largely already come to an agreement is just not worth the time and cost for those parties. On the other end of the spectrum, there are parties who, for whatever reason, will not be able to work effectively and efficiently with their partner to come to agreements. That can include some anger issues, that can include domestic violence, although you can do a collaborative case with domestic violence with the right bumpers on either side. It can include issues of mental health issues or substance abuse, and it may just not be the right process for some people. And so you do have to be careful about your screening. I do want to say that our statute, our CW 7.77, does require a domestic violence screening to determine whether the collaborative process is the correct process for parties to use.
I always say that, each couple, each family is different. So what may work for one family may not work for another. But I do feel like, and maybe you can speak on this, there are mechanisms or things in the collaborative process that can make it a good fit for many families. Of course, when there's domestic violence, we have to be careful that those protections are in place. But would you say that's true that in many families it would be a good fit?
Sure. If you look at, the bell curve everybody looks at, the cases I was talking about that aren't a good fit are at the end of the bell curve, right? But everything in the middle, I think can be worked in the collaborative process.
What have you enjoyed most, or what has been the most fulfilling for you um, doing collaborative divorces?
I think part of what I find most satisfying and fulfilling is that I don't have to dislike the other party, right? I can appreciate what their needs and concerns are as much as what my client's needs and concerns are, and help both the parties work together to find a way to meet each of their individual needs. Oftentimes I get thanked by the other party as much as my client thanks me. And I really appreciate the fact that we look at a collaborative process as a family unit who is going through a rough time, and that unit needs help together. So I find a lot of satisfaction in working with both parties like that.
There's definitely a level of respect there and just being amicable with everyone, with each other, the spouses, with the professional team, which can be different when you're in a litigation environment and people are feeling like, oh, they're on the defense or
Right.
they're trying to get something. So that definitely is a benefit of the collaborative divorce. So I want to share your information. So if you have questions about the collaborative process, you think it'd be a good fit for you, definitely please reach out to Rachel or myself. I put the contact information up here. Rachel, thank you so much for all the information you shared with us. I really appreciate it. I
It
have a
was a
lot of
pleasure. I enjoyed this.
respect
Thank
and
you, Lisa.
admiration for you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.